Hello all, welcome to the online lecture series of Rajagiri School of Engineering and Technology. I am Anjushree VK, Assistant Professor, Department of Computer Science and Engineering. In this session, I will be handling part 2 of Module 1. Hope you already gone through the part 1 of Module 1. And in this case, I will be going to discuss the following contents. The contents are system attributes to performance. That means how we can evaluate the performance of a machine and the different attributes that is actually using for evaluating the performance. And another one is Amdahl's law. It is actually used for computing the amount of parallelism that is present in a machine, or the amount of parallelism that we can use in a machine in order to improve the performance. So both of these are related to the performance of the machine. The first is about system attributes to performance. The ideal performance of a computer system demands a perfect match between machine capability and program behavior. Machine capability can be enhanced with better hardware technology, innovative architectural features, and efficient resource management. However, program behavior is difficult to predict due to its heavy dependence on application and runtime conditions. There are also many other factors affecting program behavior, such as algorithm design, data structure, language efficiency, programmer skill, and compiler technology. So these are the factors that are affecting the behavior of a program. So that are listed here. And it is impossible to achieve a perfect match between hardware and software by merely improving only a few factors without touching the other factors. So in order to improve the performance, or in order to achieve the better result, or in order to gain the better result, we need to consider all the factors that are present in a machine. And machine performance may vary from program to program, and already we know some of the factors that we, or some of the performance metrics that we use. One is turnaround time, another one is CPU time. So you know what is already turnaround time and CPU time. Turnaround time is actually the completion time of a particular program or a particular process, and CPU time is the time that is taken by that particular machine to execute that set of tasks or a set of processes. So that may include like memory access, resource access. All these will come in this case of CPU time, and as well as turnaround time. So depending upon each and every program, this may vary. And some of the other factors, like some other fundamental factors are also there for projecting the performance of it. So I'll be going to discuss what are these additional factors that we have to consider while evaluating the performance of a machine, or in order to improve, or in order to project the performance of a machine. The first thing I'm going to consider here is clock rate and CPU. And these are all the different parameters or the factors that I'm going to discuss in the case of system attributes and performance. One is cycle time. Another one is the inverse of the cycle time, and it is known as clock rate, and it is represented using F, and cycle time is represented using tau, the letter tau. And the inverse of the cycle time, it is also known as clock rate. It is represented using 1 by tau, and it is also known as F. And the second thing is, another thing is the size of the program, that is the instruction count, the total number of instruction that is present in a program. That is mentioned as instruction count, or it can be represented by using IC. The other thing is cycles per instruction. It is CPI. It is a parameter actually used for measuring time needed to execute each instruction. And one more factor is there, that is known as CPU clock cycles, that is represented using capital C. And the other one important factor is also there, that is known as CPU time, that is represented using capital T. It is also known as execution time, and it is actually measured in seconds per program. So these are the different factors that we are going to consider here. So in the coming slides, I will explain what are these factors and how we can measure these factors. What are the different equations that we have to use in order to evaluate, or in order to find out these things. So it is very important, and all these equations are very important. So by using these equation only, you can solve the problems that are coming from this part. So for the past 2-3 university exam, continuously questions are asking from this part. So note carefully the questions or the equations that are given here. From here onwards, I will be explaining the terms that I illustrated in the previous slide. And the first thing is about clock rate or cycle time. Hence, you already know that all computers are constructed using a clock running at a constant rate. So in humans, there will be a pineal gland is there. Similarly, in each and every machine, in the processor or in the CPU, there is a clock that is continuously running. And it is actually running in a constant rate, or it is oscillating at a constant rate. And these discrete time events are called ticks. And the oscillation, that means the oscillation or the oscillation of this clock or these are known as discrete time events, and this is known as ticks, or it can otherwise known as clock ticks, clock periods, clocks, cycles, or clock cycles. Actually, this is represented using tau. Computer designers revert to the time of a clock period by its duration or by its rate. So if you are referring this particular clock cycle by its rate, then it is known as clock rate. It is represented by using F is equal to 1 by 2. And using this, you can evaluate the CPU time for a program, and it can be expressed in two different ways. One is by means of CPU clock cycles and clock cycle time. So if you are expressing this by means of CPU clock cycles and clock cycle time, you have to multiply these two. That means the number of clock cycles that is required for executing that particular program into the total time that is taken for executing that program. So both of these, if you are multiplying, you will get the total CPU time. And this clock cycle time is known as what? It is the tau. So if you are representing the CPU clock cycles for a program, already in the previous slide I told you that CPU clock cycles for a program, that is actually represented by using capital C. So CPU clock cycles for a program into clock cycle time will give you CPU time, that is actually C into tau. And the next thing is CPU time. So CPU time, again another equation is also there. So if you are representing this clock cycle time, if you are taking the inverse of this clock cycle time, it is known as what? Clock rate. That is F is equal to 1 by 2. That is, this clock cycle time is tau, and if you are taking the reciprocal of this clock cycle time, it is known as clock rate. It is represented using F. F is equal to actually 1 by 2. So if you want to represent the CPU time in a different way, you can write it as CPU clock cycles for a program divided by clock rate. It is actually C by F. That is actually another form of representing CPU time. So that is one equation for computing CPU time or execution time. Both are same, and you can use these two equations for computing CPU time. And if we know the number of clock cycles and the instruction count, we can calculate the average number of clock cycles per instruction. What is average number of clock cycles per instruction? It is the CPI, clock cycles per instruction. Number of clock cycles that is required for executing each instruction. That is CPI. So if you know the CPU clock cycles and the instruction count, you can use these two for computing the CPI. So how will you write it? CPU clock cycles for a program divided by instruction count will give you what? CPI. That is the method for evaluating CPI. And one more method is there for evaluating CPU time using instruction count, clock cycle time, and cycles per instruction. So if you are using these three together, you can evaluate CPU time again in some other way. So in the previous slide, I told you how to evaluate CPU time using clock cycles, number of the total clock cycles and the cycle time. So here I am telling you how you can evaluate the CPU time using instruction count, cycles per instruction, and clock cycle time. So if you are multiplying these three together, you will get CPU time. That is instruction count into clock cycle time into cycles per instruction. So these three together will give you CPU time. Or in other way, Already I told you that this clock cycle time, you can also represent it as the inverse. Clock cycle time is what? Tau. If you are representing it, if you are taking the reciprocal of clock cycle time, you will get clock rate. So it is what? 1 by tau. That is what F. So you this clock cycle time, when you are taking reciprocal, it will give what? Clock rate. So instruction count into clock cycle time divided by clock rate, that will give you what? CPU time. That is another form for evaluating what? The CPU time. In the previous slides already I explained how to compute the CPU time, how to compute the cycles per instruction, what is the procedure for computing clock cycles time. All these are already explained in the previous two slides. Here I will be using some notation to represent these equations. So these are the same equation that I explained before, but using some other notations here. So here I will be using T for CPU time or execution time, IC for instruction count, CPI is used for representing cycles per instruction, and tau is actually used for representing clock cycle time, F is actually used for representing clock rate, and C is actually explained, it is cycles, total number of clock cycles. How we are going to represent? Let's check how we are going to represent these set of equation using this notation. The first thing is capital T, that is the execution time. So if you need the execution time, the equation that I explained in the previous slide was instruction count into cycles per instruction into clock cycle time. So if you are multiplying these three together, you will get T. So that equation I am representing here using the notation ICCPI2. The same equation if you are taking the 1 by 2, that is if you are representing, if you need to represent it using clock rate. What is clock rate? It is F, that is equal to 1 by 2. So if you need to represent it using clock rate, you have to write T is equal to IC into CPI into 1 by F, because F is equal to 1 by 2. And also before the previous slide I explained about clock cycles. C is equal to CPI into IC, that is clock cycle, total number of clock cycle is capital C. So if you need capital C, you have to use CPI into IC, that means instruction count into cycles per instruction will give you capital C. And this T, you can represent this T also using this. So you can see here that if you are multiplying IC into CPI into tau, you are getting T. And if I am replacing this IC and CPI here with a capital C, why? Because IC and CPI, if you are multiplying, it will give you capital C. So I am replacing this IC into CPI with a capital C, then you will get what? T is equal to C into tau. That is another method for evaluating capital T. And if you are replacing this tau again here you can see I am replacing this tau again with clock rate, then you are getting yet another equation, that is C by F. That is also another method for evaluating capital T. And also from this equation also you will get another equation for evaluating CPI, that also I explained before. CPI is equal to C by IC. That is also another method for evaluating this CPI. And these are the set of equations that you can use. Also here you can see one more equation that is used for representing, or that is used for evaluating capital T. Here I am using the same equation, but the slight difference is here, that is CPI is replaced with 3 parameters. So what are these parameters? So CPI I am dividing into two. One is known as memory cycle and another one is known as processor cycle. Memory cycle is represented by using M and processor cycle is represented using P. What is this memory cycle and what is processor cycle? Memory cycle is the time that is needed to complete one memory reference, and processor cycle, it is actually it is used for referring, or it is actually used for getting the processor operation done. That is actually memory cycle and processor cycle. So the CPI of an instruction type can be divided into two component terms corresponding to the total processor cycle and memory cycle needed to complete the execution of the instruction. And here P is, already I told you, P is processor cycle and M is memory cycle. And what is K? K is actually the ratio. That is, the value of k actually depends on the speed of the cache and memory technology and processor memory interconnection scheme that is used. So what is k? It is actually the ratio between memory cycle and processor cycle. So if you are representing CPI using P and M, you can rewrite the equation as, instead of CPI you can use P plus M. P is the processor cycle and M is the memory cycle into K. K is actually the ratio between memory cycle and processor cycle. So you can rewrite the equation like T is equal to IC into P plus M into K into tau. Again, if you are using this F here, you can write IC into P plus M into K into 1 by F. That is also another method for evaluating T. So these are all the different equations that you have to use for computing the performance, and there are so many questions coming from this part. I will discuss the questions after completing this session. These are also some more equations that you can use while asking problems from this part. Using CPU, how to calculate the number of total CPU clock cycles. So CPU clock cycles you can evaluate also using, if you are having a set of instructions. So if they are giving a certain number of instruction, certain number of arithmetic instructions, certain number of subtraction instruction, certain number of multiplication instruction, logic instruction, many type of instructions are given. How will you evaluate CPU clock cycles? CPU clock cycle is what? It is C. So if you want to evaluate C, you can multiply IC into CPI. That I already told you. So if a set of instructions are given there, you have to take the summation of these multiplications. That means summation of IC into CPI. That is actually given there. And this form can be used to express the CPU time also. So if you are multiplying this summation again with the clock cycle time, that is the tau, you will get what? Again CPU time. So that is CPU time can also be evaluated using this method. This is another equation, very important equation, not this equation. And you can also evaluate the overall CPI using this method. IC into CPI, that is actually what? The C, capital C divided by instruction count. So summation of IC into CPI will give you capital C divided by instruction count will again give you what? The overall CPI. So this is also another method for evaluating the CPI. Next is the system attributes. The 5 parameters that I explained now, like IC, instruction count, processor cycle, memory cycle, then the K, which is actually the ratio between memory cycle and processor cycle, and the tau, which is actually the cycle time. So these are all known as the performance factors. So IC, P, M, K, tau, these are all known as the performance factors. And actually these performance factors are influenced by 4 system attributes. So what are the system attributes? You can see here: instruction set architecture, compiler technology, processor implementation and control, cache and memory hierarchy. These are all actually the different types of system attributes. And now I am going to tell you how this instruction set or how this different types of system attributes are affecting the performance factors, or vice versa, how these performance factors are affecting the different system attributes. So the first one that you can see here is the instruction set architecture. The instruction set architecture is a system attribute. It is actually depending on the performance factors like IC and the processor cycle. Similarly, the compiler technology, if you are taking, it is actually depending on again IC and the processor cycle, but along with that it is also depending on the memory references. So if the compiler technology, if you want to implement the compiler technology, you need to know the memory references, processor references, along with the total number of instruction count. That is another thing. The third one is processor implementation and control. If you want to implement a processor, then you have to know, or you need to care about what the processor cycle. Along with that, you have to care about the processor cycle time, that is the tau. These are the 2 factors that is affecting the system attribute. Next, the last one is the cache and memory hierarchy. It is actually depending on the memory access latency, that is the K, and the processor cycle time, which is the tau. So these are the different performance factor versus system attributes data. Another factor that you have to know is MIPS rate, which is known as million instructions per second. What is million instruction per second? It is actually used for measuring the speed of the processor. So the earlier thing that I discussed was actually used for measuring the performance of a machine or a processor, CPU. All these are same. Processor, machine, CPU. These are the same, similar terms. And this MIPS, it is actually used for evaluating the speed of a machine. And how you can evaluate the speed of a machine? So for that there are some equations. So if for the exam MIPS rate is asking, you can directly use this equation for finding out the answer. So the first equation is IC divided by T into 10 raised to 6. What is IC? It is the instruction count. And what is T? It is actually what? It is the execution time or the CPU time. So if you are multiplying these three, or if you are dividing IC with these two terms, you will get what? MIPS rate. And the second equation that you can derive from this particular equation is F by CPI into 10 raised to 6. How you will get it? So simply replace this T. So what is T? It is actually IC into CPI into tau. This is actually what T. So if you are replacing this T with this particular equation, what will happen? This IC and this IC will get cancelled, and this tau, it will become what? 1 by tau. It is 1 by tau and it will become what? F. So F by the remaining term is CPI into 10 raised to 6. And one more thing, one more equation you will get from here, that is CPI. Here CPI, from this equation you can replace the CPI by what? C divided by IC. That is also another equation that you can use for representing CPI. And if you are representing CPI by C by IC, then what will happen? So the C will come here and this IC will be what? It will go to the numerator part, and F into IC divided by C into 10 raised to 6. So that will be another equation for evaluating this MIPS rate or the speed of the machine. And it is so these are the three equations that you can use for MIPS rate evaluation. The next thing is the throughput rate. So the throughput is what? It is actually the number of instructions that you can execute per second. That is actually the throughput. So throughput is represented by using W, and if you want to evaluate the throughput of a machine, you can simply use F divided by IC into CPI. Again you will get many equations from this particular equation if you are replacing the CPI, IC, F, so and so. So all these equations are very important. They are the fundamental things to evaluate the machine. And the throughput rate, the unit of this throughput rate is programs per second. That is all about how to evaluate the machine. And the next is the different programming environments. If you are taking a conventional uniprocessor computer, they are programmed in a sequential environment in which instructions are executed one after the other in a sequential manner. So successive system calls must be serialized through the kernel. When you are using a parallel computer, one desires a parallel environment where parallelism is automatically exploited. Language extension or new constructs must be developed to specify parallelism or to facilitate easy detection of parallelism at various granularity levels. And besides parallel languages and compilers, the operating system must be also extended to support parallel processing. And there are two programming environments mainly, implicit parallelism and explicit parallelism. What is implicit parallelism? So I will explain implicit parallelism first. It is actually an implicit approach, uses a conventional language such as C, C++, Fortran or Pascal to write the source program. The sequentially coded source program is translated into parallel object code by a parallelizing compiler. That is very important. So in the implicit parallelism, there will be a parallelizing compiler. So if you are giving a sequential code to this particular, what is the use of the compiler first? It is actually used for translating the high level language into low level language. So for a parallelizing compiler, if you are giving sequential code as the input, it will automatically convert the sequential code into parallel program. That is done by the parallelizing compiler. It is actually, this is actually the principle of implicit parallelism. And this compiler must be able to detect parallelism and assign target machine resources. So automatically it will detect the parallelism and it will assign that to the target machine resources. That is simply implicit parallelism. And the second thing is explicit parallelism. It requires more effort by the programmer to develop a source program using parallel dialects of C, C++, Fortran or Pascal. So you have to identify, the programmer needs to identify how he can program C, C++ or Fortran in a parallel way. Here the programmer will have more role in order to code this input language in a parallelized way. Parallelism is explicitly specified in the user program, and this reduces the burden of the compiler to detect the parallelism. Instead, the compiler needs to preserve parallelism and where possible assigns target machine resources. So here the compiler is not doing anything related to parallelism, and it is only doing preserving the parallelism and assigns to the target machine resources. Each and everything regarding the parallelism will be done by the user itself, the programmer itself. The programmer will be coding, or he will be giving the input in a parallelized way, and the compiler will preserve that parallelism, and the compiler will be translating and assigning it to the target machine language. So all these things will be done by the user itself in the explicit parallelism. This is the diagrammatic representation of this explicit and implicit parallelism. First, let's discuss about the implicit parallelism figure. So in this case, you can see the programmer is there. He will be giving some code. So in the case of implicit parallelism, what will happen? There will be a parallelizing compiler. So the input language will be, the source language will be coming in as a sequential language. C, C++ are the different languages. It is coming as a sequential language, and the parallelizing compiler will do what? It will convert automatically the sequential language into parallelizing format. The compiler will be doing all these things. There is no role for the user or the programmer, and it will be converted into a parallel object code like as the normal compilers is doing, and finally it will be executed at the runtime. That is actually implicit parallelism. And in the case of explicit parallelism, if you are coming to this part, so you can see here the source code is actually a concurrent dialects of C, C++, Fortran or Pascal. Concurrent dialects means what? At the same time, one or two instructions can parallelly execute. So that type of a source code is given to the compiler. So the compiler is not doing any type of parallelism here. What it is doing, it is only preserving the concurrency there. So it is a concurrency preserving compiler because it is maintaining this parallelism property that is present in the program. And after that, it will be converting to the object code that is normally doing by the compiler. Along with that, it is preserving the parallelism, and after that, finally the execution is going on. That is all about what? The implicit parallelism and the explicit parallelism. Next is an exercise. So it is actually depending on the equations that we discussed earlier. The question is, a 400 MHz processor was used to execute a benchmark program with the following instruction mix and clock cycle counts. Determine the effective CPI, MIPS rate and execution time for this program. So the question is to evaluate the CPI, MIPS rate, execution time and for this program. As you evaluate the normal problems, first you have to identify what are the factors that are given here. A 400 MHz processor. So the clock rate is already given here. So it is directly given in the question. Along with that, what table is also here. So what is given in the table? There are a set of instruction types and instruction count, clock cycle count. All these are the things that are given in the table. So what are the different types of instruction? Integer arithmetic instruction is there. Data transfer instruction is there. Floating point instruction is there. Control transfer instruction is there. Along with that, the count is also given. 4,50,000, 3,20,000, like that, the count of each and every instruction. And the clock cycle count, 1, how many clock cycles it will take. For integer arithmetic, 1. Data transfer, 2. Floating point, 2. It is not for 4,50,000. It is for one single instruction. And if you need to find out the total clock cycles, you have to multiply these two, 4,50,000 into 1 or 3,20,000 into 2, like that you have to perform. Then only you will get the total instruction or the total clock cycle for this 4,50,000 instruction. So that is about the question. So from this we have to find out the effective CPI, MIPS rate, execution time and all. About the solution, first of all you have to identify what is the most appropriate equation that you can use here. So I am using here this particular equation, that is CPI is equal to C divided by IC. You know already what is this equation. If you want to evaluate cycles per instruction, you need to divide the total clock cycles divided by IC. So here you require what? C and IC. Then only you can evaluate CPI. Because in our question, three things are actually asked. One is CPI, another one is total execution time or the CPU time, and the third one is MIPS rate. So first of all, I am going to find out CPI, because if you need to find out execution time also, you need what? CPI. So I am going to find out CPI here first. CPI is C by IC. So in order to evaluate CPI, C and IC is required. So how will you find out C and IC? So C is actually what? The total clock cycles needed. So if you are remembering, I already discussed how to find out total clock cycles. If you have a set of instruction, you need to take the summation of IC into what? The clock cycles. So in the previous table it is already given what are the different the number of instructions for each and every category. Along with that, its clock cycle is already given. So you have to multiply these two and add up. Taking the summation of all these, you will get the total clock cycles needed. So I am getting here this value, and after that I need IC. So IC also you need to find out each and every category, arithmetic, all these category you have certain number of instruction like 4,50,000, 3,20,000, 1,50,000, 80,000, all these are given. If you are adding up all this, you will get what? The total instruction count. So here you are getting what? This value as the total instruction count. So hence you can find the effective CPI by using C by IC. C is what? This value, and IC is value this value. So if you are dividing these two, you will get the effective CPI. And also now CPI is available for you. Now you can find out the execution time, that is capital T. How will you find out the execution time? Using IC into CPI into tau. So here tau is not given. Instead of that, they are given clock rate, which is actually the F value. So F you can use IC into CPI into 1 by F. And one more thing you have to remember here. Here the clock rate is actually given as 400 megahertz. So you have to convert it into standard hertz format. So before doing the problem, you have to be clear with what is mega, giga, tera, peta. So mega is actually 10 raised to 6 hertz, giga is 10 raised to 9 hertz, tera is 10 raised to 12 hertz, peta is 10 raised to 15 hertz. So here you can use this megahertz and IC into CPI into 1 by F. So instead of this IC, you can use this value, and CPI already we found here, it is 1.55 into 1 divided by F, which is 400 into 10 raised to 6. That will give you execution time capital T. Next is so that is also over. So we found this CPI, so also this execution time. Next is MIPS rate. So you can find out this MIPS rate by using the equation that is already given, clock frequency. So any equation you can use, because all the things are now available. So F divided by CPI into 10 raised to 6. Simply you can use F is given and CPI is also available with us into 10 raised to 6. That will give you MIPS. So remember to write this unit also here. So that is all about this question or this equation. Next is Amdahl's law. So it is actually a law that is actually put forward by the scientist named Gene Amdahl. It is actually a computer architect from IBM and the Amdahl Corporation. So what he does is he used this formula to find the maximum improvement possible by improving a particular part of a machine. So if you have a machine, then if you are improving, so if suppose if you are taking your machine, you will have memory, you will have processor, you will have input output devices, so many things are present in your machine. In order to improve the performance of the machine, if you are increasing the performance of any one part of your machine. So how your performance is affecting this improvement, that is actually put forward by Amdal. So this idea he put forward actually for the parallel computing. So in parallel computing, Amdal's law is mainly used to predict the theoretical maximum speedup for program processing using multiple processors. So in the case of parallel processing, multiple processors will be there, and these multiple processors will be performing or will be executing at the same time using multiple instruction. And in this case, how we can achieve or how we can gain the maximum speed up in this by using this particular law in a parallel programming way, that is actually Amdal's law. The performance gain can be obtained by improving some portion of a particular computer. That is, already I told you, if you have a machine, certain different number of components will be there. So if you are improving some part of that particular machine, what is the improvement that you will be getting, or what is the performance that you can obtain if you are improving some part of the computer. Similarly, if you are taking the parallel environment, you will be having different processor. So if you are taking one or two processor and if you are improving the performance of that processor, then what is the improvement, total improvement that you are attaining? That is Amdal's law. So Amdal's law states that the performance improvement to be gained from using some faster mode of execution is limited by the fraction of time the faster mode can be used. So different statements are there related to Amdal's law. So one statement is there, that is, the performance improvement to be gained from using some faster mode of execution is limited by the fraction of time the faster mode can be used. Suppose if you are taking the memory of your machine, and if you are taking consideration the memory will be improved for only 2 seconds. So that time, that the amount of fraction of time, that improvement that you are using, that is also taking consideration for this improvement, the final improvement. So the time that you are taking or the time that you are allowed to improve that particular part, that is also affecting the faster mode or the entire performance improvement of that particular machine. Amdal's law defines the speed up gained using a particular feature. It actually relates the improvement of the system performance with the parts that didn't perform well. Like we need to take care of the performance of the parts of the system. So if you have a machine, you have to take consider of all the parts of the machine, and if some of the parts of the machine is not performing well, you can improve it. So that will result in the overall improvement of the system performance. That is actually what Amdal's law. Suppose if you are taking, this is actually a real life example. So many a gate or a function is there. Suppose if you are planning to go for an inauguration function of a particular event, and there is a restriction there at the gate. If only 3 of you are approaches, then only the entry will be possible. And suppose 3 of you are going with your 2 of your friends, and if you are planning to enter into the particular event, and you are thinking like, or you are deciding like, one of you will come by bicycle, another is coming by normal walking mode, and you are coming through bike. So all of you are planning to enter into the function, and the only restriction is that what, the gate will be opened if the 3 of you will approach together in front of that gate. And after, so you can imagine who will come first. The one that is coming by a motorcycle, he will be the one that is reaching first in front of the gate. So after reaching, after the person that is coming via the motorcycle reaches the gate, so he will be waiting for the other 2 to reach there, because they are coming in a slow mode. That is actually the idea behind this Amdal's law. So if the 2 other parts of the machine is working or it is performing very weak, then you have to improve that weak part. Then only you will get the overall improvement. That is the main idea behind the Amdal's law. And you also need to consider how much time that weak part is getting improved. That also will depend on what, the entire performance on the machine. So Amdal is actually thinking about this in a parallel environment. So in the parallel environment, many processors will be there. Some will be working better way and some will be working in a weak way. So you have to give consideration for those processors who are working in a weak way. So if you are improving the performance of the machine of those weak processors, you will be able to attain a better performance than the previous one. So here are some equations are there. Speed up can be calculated. So basically Amdahl's law is used for speed up calculation. So speed up can be calculated by using two methods. One equation is performance for the entire task using enhancement when possible divided by performance for entire task without using the enhancement. So this is actually taking the ratio. Here it is taking the ratio before doing the enhancement, without doing the enhancement, and between without using the enhancement and with using the enhancement. So performance for the entire task using enhancement divided by performance for entire task without using the enhancement. That is actually the speed up. Also, the speed up can also be represented using the execution time. So actually the execution time is actually inversely proportional to this performance. So instead of this performance you can use execution time. So this will come like this, that is the execution time for entire task without using the enhancement will come here, because this is performance is actually the reciprocal of execution time. So here without enhancement will come and here with the enhancement will come. So that is about the speed up. And also speed up is actually depending on two more other factors. That is, one is the fraction of the computation time in the original machine that can be converted to take the advantage of enhancement. That is the time required to take the enhancement. That is represented using fraction enhancement. Already I told you how much time that it is actually using the enhancement. So how much time it is actually taking the advantage of the enhancement, that is fraction enhance. So this value is actually always it will be less than or equal to 1. That is one term, or that is the first factor that is known as fraction enhanced. The next first factor is speed up enhanced. It is the previous one was fraction enhanced. Here the next is speed up enhanced. It is actually the improvement that is gained by enhanced execution mode. That is how much the machine or the processor improved due to the particular enhancement that we gave. That is actually the speed up enhanced. It is actually a value that is always greater than 1. So this is how much faster the task would run if the enhanced mode were used for the entire program. That is speed up enhanced. So using these two, that is the fraction enhanced and the speed up enhanced, how we can evaluate the execution time as well as the speed up. So the execution time using the original machine with the enhanced mode will be the time spent using the unenhanced portion of the machine plus the time spent using the enhancement. So the enhanced portion and the unenhanced portion, both these times, the time required for this or the time that is spent using this unenhanced portion and enhanced portion, both these together will give you what? The total enhancement or the total speed up. So that we will be the equation for evaluating this will be explained next. So the execution time new that can be evaluated by using execution time old into 1 minus fraction enhanced plus fraction enhanced by the speed up enhanced. That is the equation that is used for evaluating execution time of the new execution time and the overall speed up. This is the very important part. So this is actually the question, or this related to this part, the questions are already asked for the university exam. This is actually the equation used for connecting Amdahl's law. So here speed up overall, it is actually evaluated by using execution time old by execution time new. So this already I explained how to evaluate the speed up. Execution time without enhancement, that is the old, and execution time with enhancement, that is execution time new. And if you are substituting this execution time new here, so you will get what the final equation that you will be getting will be this and this execution time old and the execution time old in this case will be get cancelled. Here execution time old is there. When you are substituting execution time new, instead of this execution time new, it will become execution time old divided by execution time old into 1 minus fraction enhanced plus fraction enhanced by speed up enhanced. So execution time old and this execution time old will get cancelled, and the final equation will be 1 minus fraction enhanced plus fraction enhanced by speed up enhanced. So actually this is the final equation that is used for evaluating the speed up of a machine using Amdahl's law. What is the equation? It is 1 by 1 minus fraction enhanced plus fraction enhanced by speed up enhanced. This is the equation. It's a very important equation from the Amdahl's law part. You have to note down the equation for speed up of Amdahl's law. Next we will discuss one exercise from Amdahl's law. The question is suppose that we are considering an enhancement to the processor of a server system used for web serving. The new CPU is 10 times faster on computation in the web serving application than the original processor. Assuming that the original CPU is busy with computation 40% of the time and is waiting for I/O 60% of the time, what is the overall speed up gained by incorporating the enhancement? Already we know what is the speed up. How will you calculate the speed up using Amdahl? So what is the equation? Speed up is equal to 1 by 1 minus fraction enhanced plus fraction enhanced by speed up enhanced. So we have to identify these terms. Fraction, what is fraction enhanced? What is speed up enhanced? These things we have to identify. Here it is given the new CPU is 10 times faster and the computation, that is the CPU is busy with computation 40% of the time and it is waiting for I/O 60% of the time. These are actually the clues for doing this exercise. The solution is fraction enhanced, that is 40% of the time it is busy. So that is actually what the fraction enhanced, the enhancement that is made there. Speed up enhanced, that means the final improvement, that is it is 10 times faster. So that is the speed up enhanced. So 10. So the overall speed up can be evaluated by 1 by 1 minus fraction enhanced. 1 minus fraction enhanced is 1 by 1 minus 0.4. So 1 by 1 minus 0.4. So 1 by 1 minus 0.4 will give you 0.6. That is 1 minus fraction enhanced plus fraction enhanced by speed up enhanced. So 0.4 by 10. So the total it will give you approximately 1.56. So that is the overall speed up. So once again I will tell you what is fraction enhanced. That means the improvement that is attained, the amount of enhancement that is attained, that is 0.4, because that processor is actually busy with that and the remaining is actually waiting for I/O. 60% is waiting for I/O. So that is not our enhancement. So what is the additional thing, or this processor is actually busy for 40% of the time. So that is our fraction enhanced. And the speed up enhanced is it is 10 times faster. So it is attaining that 10 times faster due to this particular enhancement. So 10 is our speed up enhanced. So we can compute this by using this particular equation. Next is another question. It is actually a common transformation required in graphic engines is square root. Implementation of floating point square root varies significantly in performance, especially among processors designed for graphics. Suppose FP square root is responsible for 20% of the execution time of a critical graphics benchmark. One proposal is to enhance the FP SQR hardware and speed up this operation by a factor of 10. The other alternative is just to try to make all FP instruction in the graphic processor run faster by a factor of 1.6. The FP instructions are responsible for a total of 50% of the execution time for the application. The design team believes that they can make all the FP instructions run 1.6 times faster. The same effort as required for the fast square root. Compare these two design alternatives. So a machine is there and it is having a floating point operation and floating point square root operation. So in the question they are telling about a floating point and floating point square root operation, and they are telling about what are the requirements or related matters about FPSQR, floating point square root, as well as floating point. So in the case of FPSQR, 20% time of the execution, 20% of the execution time of a critical benchmark. One proposal is to enhance the FPSQR hardware and speed up this operation by a factor of 10. So the speed up is 10 for FPSQR, that we can identify here. So here speed up of FPSQR, it is 10. The other alternative is just to try to make it all FP instruction in the graphics processor run by a factor of 1.6. So 1.6 is also a factor. That is the speed up of what? This FP. This is actually what? The speed up of FPSQR. And FP instructions are responsible for a total of 50% of the execution time. So 50% of execution time is using by FP, and FPSQR it is 20%. So these are the terms that we have to identify. And what is the question? The design team believes that they can make all FP instruction run 1.6 times faster with the same effort as required for the fast square root. So the design team is actually believing that they can execute all the FP instruction 1.6 times faster than the fast square root. So we have to evaluate this using FP and FPSQR. You have to find out the speed up, and using the speed up, whether you have to evaluate that whether this sentence or whether the assumption that is made by the design team is correct or not, that you have to identify. So these are the different things. 20% is actually the enhancement, that is for FPSQR, and the speed up it is made is 10, and for FP the speed up is 1.6, and its enhancement, fraction enhancement is 50. Using these things you can evaluate the speed up using the equation 1 by 1 minus fraction enhanced plus fraction enhanced by speed up enhanced. So for FPSQR, your fraction enhanced is 20%, that is 0.2. So you will get 1 minus 0.2, that you will get here, and 0.2 by 10, because 10 is actually the speed up here. So totally you will get 1.22. And for speed up of the normal floating point, it was 50% for fraction enhanced and 1.6 for speed up. And if you are evaluating it in this way, you will get it as 1.23. So from the output or the final result that you are getting here, you can see this FP is actually taking 1.23. And improving the performance of this FP operation overall is slightly better because of the higher frequency. So it is correct, because you can evaluate speed up of this FP is actually more. So the evaluation made by the design team is actually correct. So this is the reference that I used. Thank you very much.